Thanks for the introduction. So we are Prophecy Labs, and we are an AI boutique, fully remote, and we focus on end-to-end machine learning projects. We have a partnership with CTG. CTG is an information and technology provider, and they focus on bringing reliability to software. And with NaniML, we want to bring reliability to AI in production. And we're currently working on our MVP, which is actually monitoring AI, a first step towards that reliability. But before we can talk about production, we need to talk a little bit about development. So here's a quick overview again, a recap of how machine learning models get developed. We start from historic data. Why is it called historic? Because we observe a target in the past, or we collect labels of it. For instance, for customer churn, where we want to predict which customers are leaving or canceling a subscription. We have information about those customers, features, attributes, and we know which customers churn. We feed that to an algorithm. An algorithm tries to extract patterns, meaningful patterns, or formalized into a mathematical formula or a set of rules, which is called a model. We can then take that model, move it to production. I mean, in reality, it's a bit more complex, but basically then we can feed it new data for which a target has not been observed yet, like this month's customer base. The model can then predict which customers are most likely to churn. And at the end of the month, we can actually compare these predictions with which customers actually churned, and we can get a notion of the performance. The way this machine learning development cycle and production is set up is prone to some difficulties actually in practice. So there's a concept called data drift, and that actually means that your historic data, your training data, over time becomes different from your new data or your production data that goes into the model. When it comes to churn, this might be actually that because you have customers, because you launched a new feature, and you're attracting new customers, and the demographics change. So the statistical properties of the input data that goes into the model. Concept drift is the same, but it's changes in the statistical properties of the target data. So the churn itself that you would like to predict. And this can actually lead to model decay, meaning that the decisions that your models are taken into production deteriorate, and that your performance of your model actually goes down over time. And just to quickly demonstrate the impact of that, so here's the churn example. We want to identify those customers that are most likely to churn, and then we try to retain them by running marketing campaigns, giving them some extra credit to spend. But basically, if your model decays and the performance goes down, this decay is actually destroys much more business value, because machine learning and making those predictions and those decisions is actually one step in the pipeline. Everything that comes after it's based on wrong decisions that can actually have a huge impact. So we developed a solution for that. It's called NaniML. It's an enterprise software that monitors AI in production. It's a dashboarding tool with a small analytical engine in the back, which enables us to detect changes in model input and productions and basically capture data drift and concept drift. It also monitors the performance of your machine learning models, and when there is data drift or concept drift or drop in performance, it sends alerts. How does it actually work? It works at looking at the data from three views: basically the input, the features, how they change over time; the output, the predictions, how they change; and also, if it's feasible, to look at the actuals, basically the labeled data that you're still gathering. Sometimes there is a latency on these actuals. For instance, in loan default, it's only apparent after a few months or years when a customer actually churns on their loan, or in automation use cases when there's no actuals gathered anymore. So it's mostly about input and output, and then we come up with some estimation of what the impact will be when we compare this to the actuals. So in our analytics engine, of course, we create visualizations, we do statistical tests to see whether there is concept or data drift. But actually the most interesting thing that we are developing is that we use machine learning to actually capture the data drift. So you can label your data, your training data and your production data. So you would actually remove the churn target in this case and replace it by a new target, just a label, production or training. And then you can build a machine learning model which then try to actually identify which data points belong to the training data and which data points belong to the production data set. And if you have a good explainable AI engine in the back, you can actually see which features and which customers actually constitute to this change, which is called data drift and concept drift. And what we're trying to do with NaniML is actually bridge the gap between the traditional data science lifecycle. It's something called CRISP-DM. You're probably familiar with that, cross-industry standard procedure for data mining, which was invented so many years ago, but that starts with business understanding. Today, terms like MLOps, basically DevOps for machine learning, is very popular. They have a maintain component to them, but that feedback loop is usually only to the modeling segment, like retraining your models, where actually we believe that that feedback loop should go further back down that data science life cycle and go back to the beginning, which is business understanding. Because if your AI is changing, if the decisions are changing, if your data is changing, that contains a lot of valuable information about your business. So where we are today, so we just finished our POC. We're rolling out a pilot program, and we're actually looking for companies that are struggling with this model decay, with these huge problems that come with monitoring. So if you're interested and you want to collaborate with us closely, drop us a line at getnaniml.com. And yeah, maybe we'll collaborate in the future. So in summary, the world changes, data changes, AI models degrade over time because they're trained on static data. Production data is very dynamic. This might lead to AI value getting lost, and you actually do not know why, unless of course you have a good monitoring suite. Thank you.